Welcome in to Cover Crimson. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I join Clint Lamb every Monday and Wednesday at 9:30. But today it's a Friday, and we have a Friday fun show for you. Clint, how are we doing? And are you excited that January is finally coming to an end?
Was that the longest month ever?
I think so.
It felt like the longest month. And I don't know if it was just college football. Typically, college football makes it go by faster. So I don't know. That's kind of weird. Like the playoffs and stuff. Maybe the fact that it slowed down. Maybe it was the fact that Alabama was done in early, or I guess late December. I don't know. It's an interesting. It's been an interesting month. I don't know if this is the way it's going to be moving forward, but it's gone by super slow. Am I ready for it to be over? Yes. Why? Because like the Super Bowl, more football, that's coming in February, and it's one month that doesn't have a whole lot of football that is now gone by.
That's true. And I also think that the weather played a role in this too. The Alabama-Michigan game seems so long ago.
It does.
But it really wasn't. And somehow it's only the 31st. It feels like it's January 107th day, but it is not. And we will cruise into February. Any plans for the weekend though, Clint?
No plans for the weekend. I don't know that next weekend we got a pretty busy weekend with the Super Bowl and everything. I got some stuff I got to get done, but this weekend we're taking it easy because there's no football, not a whole lot going on. I'm not going to know what to do with myself. I'm glad we're doing this sort of thing because if I wasn't getting my football fix somewhere, I don't know that I can make it through the off season.
No, I agree. And that's why we encourage you to sign up for Cover Crimson, covercrimson.com. You can continue to get your football fix with us and a whole cast of characters that we enjoy working with. Different conversations are always taking place, whether it's about Alabama football, what we're seeing with basketball. Baseball is coming up. I'm sure we'll have some baseball commentary. I'm a big baseball fan, big Braves fan, so I try and keep everyone in the loop on that front as well. But please sign up for Cover Crimson. We would love to have you over there. And then, of course, follow us across social media. As you can see down below at Cover Crimson, and that's where we are on Twitter, Instagram, things of that nature. So check us out there. Today, Clint, we are actually wrapping up our series that we started at the beginning of the month, crazily enough. And we have been looking at both position groups and kind of comparing them. So we've gone across the board. And today we're wrapping up with the quarterback position and edge players. So do we want to start with edge or quarterbacks? What are we feeling?
How do you want to start it? You want to start on defense and finish up with quarterbacks, or you want to?
So I feel like the quarterback conversation might take us, there's a lot of layers to that. And I also want to touch on Coach DeBoer's comments at the Senior Bowl. I want to talk about Jaylen Milro. Jesse Dvorak was on the next round yesterday, and he had some interesting things to say about the hand size and if that actually does correlate with the draft and things like that. So let's start with edge, and then we'll kind of move on into quarterback. So with that being said, give me your overview of this position and your quick thoughts.
Obviously, the edge, to me, granted the Bandits work with the defensive linemen. The Wolves kind of work on their own, but I kind of put them together when it comes to like edge rushers because they're playing out there on the edge. Now, granted, I kind of view edge, if you're playing like a 4-eye on the inside shoulder of the tackle, a 4 technique, head up tackle, 5. I typically kind of viewed that as edge, even though, that's more used for interior defensive linemen, like 3-4 defensive ends. But, I think Alabama has a lot of production coming back, particularly at Bandit. The fact that Jamarian Latham is moving over to Wolf, he's going to be losing some weight. I find that interesting. Like he did that late in the season, and did pretty well, for being a 278, 280-pound defensive lineman. The fact that he was kind of asked to play in a 2-point stance off the ball as like that shallow off-ball linebacker in that Wolf role, seemed to do that and look pretty comfortable doing that. And it's a big body guy holding up there as far as like the interior run. So that's good. But I love what LT Overton was able to do. Very disruptive player, but he's just got to learn to finish more. And if he can do that, I think Alabama is going to be in pretty good shape as far as their pass rush, but they're loaded at both Bandit and Wolf, to be honest.
Okay. I want to touch on that Bandit and Wolf position. I know we've touched on it before, but in this video specifically, when people are coming back to watch this to get their Alabama fix, whether it's 2 months from now, next week, do you have a way that you explain the difference in those two positions to someone that may not understand the nuances of a swarm defense?
Yeah, so the Bandit position's like a strong side defensive end. It's a bigger body guy. And even in Nick Saban's defenses, he didn't quote unquote have like the swarm 4-2-5 defense, but you saw a lot of 4-2-5 with the star on the field and all that. But like Justin Neboybe played like a bandit type of role for Alabama, where he's really, he can kick inside in some passing situations, but he's more of a bigger body guy out there on the edge to help stop the run. The bandit typically plays, he always is going to be playing to the field side, the wide side of the field, while the Wolf or the jack linebacker in Alabama's defense under Nick Saban, it was more of the boundary player to the short side of the field. And a Wolf, because of, using motion and doing a lot of different things, in certain formations, the Wolf's going to be playing off the ball. It's going to be like a 3-man front, so it looks more like a 3-3-5. That's where people get confused. But that Wolf really doesn't have pass responsibilities. It's just a matter of what gap is he going to be responsible for. But it's kind of a flexible position. So it's more of your primary pass rusher, even though in Kane Womack's defense, your bandit, whether that be at South Alabama or at Alabama this past season, has been the primary pass rusher or the most productive pass rusher. That could have to do something with Quay Russaw being injured for most of the year, Quandarius Robinson going down, for the season. All that impacted things for sure, but LT Overton was by far the most consistent. So that's kind of the difference. Wolf is going to be a smaller guy. He's got to have the athleticism to play off the football. He's got to be a twitched up edge, got to be able to get up to the quarterback. Your bandits, your bigger body guy playing to the wide side of the field, needs to be able to hold up and stop the run. It's interesting, like Nick Saban, like I said, in a lot of obvious passing situations, he would move what would be considered that bandit position inside and let him be an interior pass rusher to take advantage of his athleticism inside. Kane Womack was more about leaving his bandit on the edge a lot of the times, but we could see that change a little bit in 2025.
Do you think that this defense will continue to rise to the occasion this next season, or do you feel like there are going to be some elements that have been figured out by the rest of the teams on their schedule? What is the ceiling for this defense?
I think the fact that you're getting guys back, Tim Keenan, you're getting a lot of your Wolves back. Demir Latham's played a lot of football at Alabama, including a year in this system. Mm-hmm. Really all three levels, you're getting, some production back, but particularly up front, it feels like, I think at times run fits and understanding how everything works together. There was some, uncomfortable moments for guys, and you saw that show up on tape. I think moving forward, everybody's going to be more comfortable playing in this system.
Okay.
And you've got also, obviously you got Kelby Collins coming in, who's going to be playing bandit from Florida, the transfer. He's a guy who I could see playing bandit. And also, at Florida, they started off having him outside. They kicked him inside and made it kind of a permanent move. I didn't like that for him. I do think situationally he can play inside, but he's more of an outside guy to me. He's going to have the opportunity to probably do both in Kane Womack's defense. So, I really think that this defense is going to continue to grow as guys get more comfortable in what they're being asked to do in specifically Kane Womack's defense.
Do you feel like this defense is desirable for players entering the transfer portal, or is there a different kind of player that Kane Womack has to recruit when it comes to filling some gaps at Alabama in the offseason?
That's a really good question. I think at certain positions, it's going to highlight your safeties. I think your off-ball linebackers are in a position to make a lot of tackles. Your guys up front, what I like about it compared to what Nick Saban did, now you're going to see some two-gapping stuff. And two-gapping is more of, it's not really desirable for a lot of defensive linemen because it's not a penetrative, glorified type of role. It's more of you're going to control the offensive lineman in front of you. You're going to allow the off-ball linebackers to go and make plays. So from that standpoint, the fact that they're going to be a little bit more disruptive with the defensive line, I think is beneficial. But at the same time, when it comes to LT Overton could have had 9.5, 10 sacks this year easily. Yeah. I think he only had 1.5 or maybe 2.
And I don't think that's an over-exaggeration either. That 9.5, 10. I think that honestly, looking back, that could be conservative in some areas.
Yeah, it really could. And I wonder if I can find it real quick. If I can't, then I'll just try to remember.
No, you're good.
But I was going back through and looking at just a ton. Okay, so I found it. Let's see if we can find some examples. Okay, so like Fedarian Mathis.
Okay.
Back in 2021, he had 25 pressures, but he had 9 sacks. You had Christian Barmore the year before, 8 sacks, 39 pressures. So getting up there in their double-digit sacks. Isaiah Buggs, 9.5 sacks with 35 pressures in 2018. Then you go look at LT Overton this year, 39 pressures, so right up there with all of those guys, but he had 2 sacks. So when you're talking about 35 to 40 pressures, when you start getting up in that range, you're bare minimum 6, 7, 8 sacks. A lot of guys are touching 9, 10, maybe even 11 or getting into the double digits. So that's why I say, really, if just some things would have broke his way, he could learn to finish a little bit better. He would have been one of the top returning sack producers in not only the SEC, but college football next year. So all he's got to do is learn how to finish a little bit better. And I think that they're going to be in really good shape at that Bandit position.
What would you attribute that to, though, the lack of finish for LT Overton? Is that something that you think will be a focal point of Kane Womack here the next few months?
Yeah, I think, when he arrives at the quarterback, he comes a little bit out of control. Okay. And he's just got to be able to, he's doing the right things. He's doing a phenomenal job as far as being disruptive and causing offensive linemen all kinds of problems. But when you actually, win against the offensive lineman, you got to get the quarterback down. And granted, there's been some shifty guys. Diego Pavia, that was one. There was a couple of times where LT Overton could have brought him down, wasn't able to do it. But it was kind of a theme for him all year, and that includes in the bowl game as well. If he can learn to finish, he's going to be a very, very disruptive player. And with Alabama, you already see what Kane Womack's defense is designed to do, which is more pressure the quarterback to generate turnovers rather than pressure the quarterback to get sacks. But there's that complementary element to it where if you can get guys who are, when they're in those positions, they can get sacks and really put the offense in a second and long situation, a third and long situation, then you can really start to mount, the third down stops. And so that's something that I could totally see moving forward. The more he gets comfortable doing that and the better he becomes as a finisher. You doing that on top of everything else Alabama was doing this year, if they can maintain and maybe even improve on that a little bit, I think defense has a chance to be really, really good.
One thing I really enjoyed about this past season was just getting the chance to hear Coach Womack chat about his defense and the way that he would explain things. Clint, we were talking about this. Was that yesterday on the phone or maybe a couple days ago? Just about how the way that he approaches the media was very unique because he was a former head coach at South Alabama. And I'm curious for you guys in the chat that are listening to us live, what were your impressions of Coach Womack from the jump? And again, I have great respect for Coach DeBoer, Coach Sheridan, Womack. I mean, really everyone in that facility, they're incredible, not only, coaches, but also men, teachers, etc. But what were your first kind of initial impressions of Coach Womack's defense, but also kind of his style of coaching?
It's strange because early on, it felt like he caught a lot of flack, especially after the Vanderbilt game, because from a number standpoint, 17 or 18 minutes time of possession for Alabama's offense, and they put up, what was it, high 30s, low 40s points.
Right.
So it's like a lot of people looked at that and they're like, the offense isn't the problem. Now, granted, I pushed back on that and said that I don't think the offense was playing enough complementary football where it's like the defense was struggling to get off the field. They would have long sustained drives and get worn out. And then the offense would go out there and they would do their job. They would put up points, but there's more to offense than just doing your job and putting up points. It's also doing your job in the sense of controlling clock when your defense has been out there for forever, giving them a little bit of a break, being able to have some long sustained drives. And you just didn't see that from Alabama. But really after that Vanderbilt game, and there were some ugly moments against South Carolina as well. And I think that the way that South Carolina finished, that became a lot more understandable to people at the time. They didn't think South Carolina was all that great. And so it was kind of like a struggle against Vanderbilt. They run all over you. You can't get any sort of stop. Guys look timid. They're playing timid. Then the very next week you have another, quote unquote, poor performance against South Carolina. But really from that point forward, it felt like the defense really started to figure some things out. And I mean, one thing that you can say, going on the road and playing Tennessee, I understand the second half things did start getting away from the defense a little bit, but they did their job. Mm-hmm. They were generating the turnovers. They were putting the offense in a position to be successful, and the offense couldn't capitalize. You look at Oklahoma. There was some moments they did allow, Jackson Arnold to have a lot of success on the ground. That was confusing to people. But the bowl, they come out firing on all cylinders, doing their job. They really limited Michigan's offense, but Alabama's offense was really the problem. It was kind of strange because based off of what we thought would be kind of the strength of the team, which was the offense, and the way that the season started on that side of the football, very strange into the season. But I actually think that when you look at the body as a whole, Kane Womack did pretty good implementing his defense and figuring some things out on the fly.
Have I shared with you, I don't know if I've shared this on air, my story about Kane Womack and Georgia Southern when he was a South Alabama head coach?
No, I've not heard this.
Well, I do have my Strutting Gus with the American flag mug that I've got going. So that, inspired me and reminded me. But when he was at South Alabama in 2021, so that was Clay Helton's first season at Georgia Southern. And so I was the primary sideline reporter with ESPN Plus at the time. I was actually still a student at Southern. And so, I was so green to this whole business, right? But I was entrusted to cover this team and had that little ESPN microphone in my hand. And South Alabama comes to town. And I remember the conversations in the coaches meeting leading up to that game, right? So as a broadcast team, the color, the play-by-play, and the sideline reporter will meet with coaches, coordinators, whomever prior to that game. And, when it's an away team, it's on Zoom. If you're at home, you get to meet in person. And I remember thinking then and hearing Coach Womack on that call, I was like, man, he just seems like a great guy. He really loves his team. And so Saturday comes around and it was raining. And if you guys know anything about South Georgia, it's humid. It's similar to, Alabama. It's just hot. It's humid. And we have gnats and mosquitoes. It's awful. And so it started raining and the sun comes back out. It's steaming. And suddenly South Alabama is up on Georgia Southern. And when I tell you, post-game, South Alabama wins, I am interviewing Coach Womack on beautiful Eagle Field at Paulson Stadium. They had 39 players out with the flu and 17 starters, and they still managed to go to Georgia Southern and beat Georgia Southern at home. With 39 players out, 17 of them starters with the flu. They flew in their best player that morning. I think had an IV hooked up to him for him to play in that game.
So we had the Michael Jordan flu game.
Literally.
Yeah, I mean that just tells you what a lot of teams would fold in that situation, not just from a depleted talent standpoint, but because of the narrative that you would kind of generate in your own mind of, man, we've got everything against us. I mean, we're missing tons of guys. We're not expected to come in here and win at this point. And it's if you can get your team focused and say it doesn't, I mean, circumstances don't matter. I think that says a lot. And I will say, you talk to people around college football, and they got a lot of respect for Kane Womack. They got a lot of respect for his dad, Dave, who was the old Miss defense coordinator for 4 or 5 years and had a lot of success. Had them being one of the top ranked defenses in the country at one point. But he's a great football mind, and he's a great motivator too.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I need to clip that interview and I need to share it on my socials because it's so funny seeing little me as a little baby interviewing Coach Womack by microphone. And he just casually was yeah, we had 39 players out with the flu. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I think
type your roster.
Yeah. And I can't remember what exactly. I want to say they were down double digits and they ran back a punt. I can't exactly remember, but suddenly the tides changed. And that was a game that Georgia Southern should have not lost at home again. And it was so demoralizing afterwards. We're like, man, 17 of those starters were out and somehow they still pull off the win. But that was my impression of Coach Womack. And then he ends up at Alabama. So a testament, you never know where people are going to land either. And that's the fun part about this business that we get to see is these coaches, it doesn't matter where they are, where they've been, everyone is connected in some form or fashion.
Yeah. And it just, Kane Womack is a big reason why Jaylen DeBoer's in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Those two, I think Jaylen DeBoer and Kane, the familiarity that Kane had with the area, the fact that he had been coaching at South Alabama, they had coached together. I just think that it was kind of a match as far as them kind of coming in together. And it just, you can tell by the way Jaylen DeBoer treats Womack. Mm-hmm. He kind of lets him do his thing. He kind of views him as a second head coach, I guess, in a lot of ways, where it's he's not over there trying to micromanage the defense. No offense to Nick Saban, but Nick, there were times where Nick would just kind of take a step back and let the offensive guys do their thing. But he also was just, I think he could have been a very successful offensive coordinator too, to be honest with you. But he would give his input and all that. And I think it was beneficial. I don't think there was a bad way to do it. Obviously, he wasn't doing it bad. What he was doing was working. But Jaylen DeBoer, he is kind of one of the big appeals I think Kane Womack is I won't be head coach and label. but I'll be the head coach of the defense.
Yeah.
And truly. And he kind of views everything from a bird's eye view. And when you interview him, we were talking about that on the phone.
Yeah.
He does talk in terms of, looking at the team as a whole, looking at how the defense impacts the offense. I think that's, and vice versa too. I think that's absolutely critical to have that mindset, because you always are keeping in mind what you need to do defensively to help out your offense. And that's why you saw a lot of opportunistic defensive plays that were setting the offense up for success. It's just the offense, if they can continue to do that at a high level, once the offense starts getting more comfortable and can capitalize on that more, that's going to make all the difference in the world on Saturdays.
It starts with the quarterback. We're going to get to that position on the offense, but give me your star rating of this edge group.
Bandit and Wolf combined, the fact that you're getting Jordan Renaud back, you're getting LT Overton back, you're getting Keon Keeley, who the coaching staff says is growing and getting better. You added Kevontae Henry, the JUCO player, a top-ranked JUCO player who can play Bandit or Wolf. The fact that you added Kelby Collins there at the Bandit position as well, who's going to be able to help out on the interior defensive line and obvious passing situations. You get Quay Russaw back, who played a lot of last season banged up or not 100% healthy. Yanze Pierre's got a ton of upside as far as pass rush ability. He's got to learn to be more of a three-down guy. Jamarian Latham went from playing Bandit to now playing Wolf. He's going to lose weight. We'll see how that impacts him and how he ends up looking, but he's a very experienced player that the coaching staff clearly wanted back. Yeah. You still got Noah Carter, who is a former top 100 recruit, and you bring in a top 50 player like Justin Hill, who I think is the absolute perfect fit for what Kane Womack wants in that Wolf position. Russaw fits a lot of those qualities. I think as an early down edge setter, he's phenomenal. I think he can do, a lot of people thought he might play some off-ball linebackers, so you looked at that and said, okay, he's like a perfect candidate. He's a good, effective pass rusher. I think he's a better version as far as being a pass rusher or has more NFL pass rushing upside than like a Ryan Anderson or a Courtney Upshaw or an Anthony Jennings. But he's more in that mold where he's more of an edge setter who is, going to provide, he would be a very strong complementary piece, a strong number 2 option that's going to get 7, 8, 9, maybe on the college level, even break double-digit sacks if everything hits right. But, I like the room in general, but Justin Hill is exactly what Kane Womack was envisioning, where it's like the twitched up, super explosive. When he gets bigger, stronger, and he learns this defense, and he's going to be able to do all that off-ball linebacker stuff on top of being able to hold up as an edge player against the run and providing that juice as a pass rusher. He's going to be an absolute phenomenal player in this Alabama defense. So for me, I'm going to go an even rated 4-star from an experience standpoint. The questions as far as where is the pass rush going to come from, I think you need to get LT Overton to finish more, continue to be that guy who's going to rack up in the high 30s, low 40s pressures. He'll probably be like your primary pass rusher, but you've got to get Russaw to be a strong complementary piece to that. Like I said, I think Yanze Pierre situationally is going to have a much bigger role. Jordan Renaud continues to grow. I just think they got too many options. It's too talented of a group for you not to get more sack production than you did last year. Like I said, I'm not expecting it to be like the Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell type of production. That's not how this defense operates, but I think it can be a lot more productive than it was last season. So I'm going to go an even 4 stars. But with the talent in that room, it can climb and be one of the highest rated positions or groups as far as edge players on the entire roster.
I'm so excited to go back and look at our takes of these position groups once we get into the season and see kind of what surprised us, what didn't come to fruition, and things like that. With that being said, we're going to turn to the quarterback position. And there's a lot of questions surrounding this. We have a true quarterback battle headed into the 2026 season. And there's a lot of questions that come along with it. We have people in the chat asking about Austin Mack, and we're going to get to that. But I do want to kind of prime this with Senior Bowl Jaylen Milro discussion and kind of what you're seeing from his production there so far.
I think you're getting exactly what you got at Alabama. You're getting up and down play. When it's there, very few players are capable of doing what he's able to do. That's just the bottom line. And that's what NFL teams are going to marvel about. That's what makes him a desirable player. But, the inconsistency, it was a major, major problem at Alabama. And I think, the people who say Alabama kind of lived and died by Jaylen Milro and his production and how well he played. A lot of teams will, because quarterback is that important of a position, but Alabama's was magnified to the umph degree this past season. And so, I've told people, when you look at the upside and all that stuff, I see late day 2 pick. It's still a pretty premium pick. When you're drafting the top 3 rounds, the NFL staffs, they kind of view you as a guy who could potentially be a starter down the road. But if you're a first round pick, it's like more times than not nowadays, we need you sooner rather than later. And I just don't think that's the situation that Jaylen Milro needs to find himself in. But I mean, he's a very talented kid. The tools are absolutely there, but he's got to get better in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the interviews, he'll absolutely be successful there. It's going to be interesting what teams feel like the upside is and if that outweighs the downsides. And that's been a discussion these last couple of days. And I know Alabama fans, you guys have been keeping up with the commentary, the videos, the accuracy issues. And Clint, I think you said it best. It's what Alabama dealt with all season long. And I think it's shedding a new light too on Coach Sheridan and perhaps the limitations that they were dealing with when it came to the offense. But also in that same breath, you're seeing those flashes, and we saw it in games like LSU. We saw it, throughout the season, those little glimpses of it. And now it's going to come down to, okay, which team is, I don't want to say willing to take a risk, but in a way is willing to build an offense around a player like Jaylen Milro.
Yeah, and that's kind of, what I want people to think about is what were some of his not top performances, but his top passing performances. Georgia was certainly there. I think he had Georgia's defense head spinning because he was just doing things that he hadn't really shown. Georgia was presenting some opportunities. They were selling out in a lot of ways, and he was taking advantage of the opportunities they were giving him. We just hadn't seen that as far as the short to intermediate stuff. But, I think Vanderbilt, from a passing standpoint, probably pretty good, even though there was some off-target stuff. I don't think it was his best game. I think the pick 6 was fluky. You can't really put that on him too much. But, when you start looking at some of the poor performances, Oklahoma, Michigan in the bowl game, Tennessee I think Tennessee probably, a lot of people will point to Oklahoma because of the pick 6s. They'll point to the Michigan game, and I think actually the Michigan game, is certainly up there. But I think the Tennessee game, as far as just the inconsistency with the mechanics and just being so off target, it was really, really bad. And so, I think from a consistency standpoint, you pretty much go to almost anything else and you would expect better consistency. You won't be able to expect some of the high moments, like when the defense couldn't stop his legs. Just understand Alabama's offense was going to have a field day. They were going to be able to do whatever they wanted to do, but you would run into those, couple of opponents that Tennessee's defense was pretty good this year, and you were playing in Knoxville. Michigan's defense, despite the fact they had a lot of guys sitting out, they are notoriously known for having a good defense. Oklahoma, Brent Venables in Norman, it's going to be a tough environment, tough defense. Great. He's great at game planning and getting his guys ready. Those type of environments, like the really big games like that you got to have, he kind of struggled in those moments. And I think from a consistency standpoint, Alabama will probably be a little bit better off. But I really hope Milro can go on and continue to grow, because he did show some growth. He went through his progressions more this year. He's more comfortable on that front. It wasn't consistent enough. And, he, in a lot of other ways, he kind of regressed. And so that's kind of, if he gets rid of the right staff that can develop him properly and let him sit for a while, I do think eventually he can be a successful NFL quarterback. But, it's going to take finding the right fit for him.
Let's talk about the upcoming quarterback position. You've got Ty Simpson. You've got Austin Mack. You've got Keelan Russell. What are you seeing out of those three? And do you feel like it is Ty Simpson's job to lose at this point?
I do still think it's Ty Simpson's job to lose, yeah. Now, here's the thing. I did find it interesting, Kalen DeBoer's remarks about the experience in the quarterback room and how there was so little. Go ahead.
I want to break that down, because I don't know if those in the chat caught this. But Clint, explain a little bit what DeBoer said. This was at the Senior Bowl, specifically about that quarterback position. And let us know your first impressions once Clint kind of explains this, of what you think Coach DeBoer meant by this.
Well, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but essentially what the way, and I hope I don't put too much of my own spin on this and present it in a way where maybe that's not the way he intended. But to me, just the way that I was interpreting it was, we like the room, but there's not a lot of experience. Now I've kind of viewed Ty Simpson. He's been in the system. It's going to be his 4th year.
Yeah.
So, and granted, only 1 year in Jaylen DeBoer's system, but by this point, he should know what he's doing on that front. And he understands the college game, and he's seen a lot in practice. He's been on scout teams going against Alabama's defense, which was one of the better defenses in the country. He's done a lot as far as the best on best stuff in practice. And there's only so much that you can simulate, but I feel like from an experience standpoint, you at least got to bring that up. But the on-field experience in games, very limited for everybody involved. Now, to me, as I'm hearing this, I still think it's Ty Simpson's job to lose, and I still think at this point he's going to be Alabama's starter. But with that said, the fact that Jaylen DeBoer pointed that out, that told me he does not personally view as any guy's experience being a significant advantage in this competition compared to others. And when you start bringing that up, makes me think, okay, Keelan Russell, I mean, from a talent standpoint, no one's going to touch Keelan Russell. Now, Granted, I think he's a little thin. He needs to get in the weight room, needs to get bigger, needs to learn the offense. I personally think it would very much benefit him to sit a year. But for the people who are kind of clamoring for him to earn the starting job in year 1, and I've kind of pushed back on that, I've acknowledged that it's certainly a possibility, and I also think it's a possibility that Austin Mack can end up winning it. But, I do want to at least acknowledge, based off of Jaylen DeBoer's comments, Keelan Russell is certainly going to have a shot, and he's more than talented enough to end up winning that job.
Well, that's a great point, because Keelan Russell is a true freshman. And this is maybe like a trivia question. I don't know if we have an exact answer. And I don't think that Keelan Russell will get the starting job game 1. But when was the last time a team started a true freshman quarterback in year 1?
Any team or Alabama?
Or any team. SEC. We'll confine it to the SEC.
In week 1.
Week 1, true freshman quarterback. And I know the answer to this. So
you do know the answer.
No, I don't know the answer to this. I
would be
looked that up before I asked.
Oh my gosh, I don't know why his name's escaping me now. Quarterback for Florida. The phenom. Dang, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name. But I know he didn't start. He was in a platoon with Graham Mertz. Why can I not remember his name? But so he didn't. Nico Iamaleava, who was a 5-star phenom, he came in. He did say what?
No, I'm saying DJ Lagway. Is that who you're talking about?
DJ Lagway. Thank you. That was that was gonna bother me really bad. Even like even for like Alabama, like Jalen Hurts didn't technically start the first game. Blake Barnett did, and then they ended up bringing in Jaylen fairly early. And with the way that Blake Barnett was kind of a deer in headlights and the way Jaylen kind of played, it was immediately known that it was going to be Jalen Hurts moving forward. And I'm sure there's some, but
so this is hilarious. I just Googled it, and you know how there's like an AI section now on Google? The AI says there isn't much information about the last time an SEC team started a true freshman quarterback in game 1. But here's some information about true freshman quarterbacks in college football. So I might have asked a question that we can't find an answer to.
Man, I would need to, and sometimes like some of these things like escape you, and like there's a very obvious answer.
Okay, well, hold on. This isn't SEC, but Trevor Lawrence might have been, but I don't know if he started game 1. This is interesting to kind of
no. Trevor Lawrence, that was Kelly Bryant.
Okay.
He was the starter, and so no, he didn't. Let me look at some of these names. So obviously Jackson Dart didn't.
No.
Garrett Nussmeier, Carson Beck didn't. Quinn Ewers didn't.
Michael Hawkins, did he start for Oklahoma game 1?
No. Jackson Arnold was their week 1 starter.
Jackson Arnold. Yep. Okay. Because he was the first road quarterback.
Right. I mean, Pavia, definitely not. Lenore Sellers, Michael Van Buren. Oh, yeah. I think it was probably Bo Nix. So that was what, 2019, maybe?
2019.
Yeah.
Did he start the first game though? That's the thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's a really interesting question. But I guarantee you, looking through these, there's just, Michael Van Buren from Mississippi State, he ended up starting throughout the, but from an SEC standpoint, not many. College football, I think Dante Moore did for UCLA, maybe not. I know Dylan Raiola did for Nebraska, but it's not common. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying it is not common whatsoever. So people think that, and actually Jim, he is 100% right. Bo Nix did win the 2019 opener against Oregon, and that's a great call. And Carson brought up Raiola. That certainly, old man Bama was right after you with Lagway. But it is not a very common thing like people think. And there's a reason for that. It takes some adjustment. And even a guy like Keelan Russell, from a body standpoint, he's lean. He's really, really lean. And and granted, that's why the comparisons are there, like Jaden Daniels. And Jaden Daniels is like listed at 210. Now, looking at him, I don't know. I don't feel 210's realistic. I feel like 195, 200 maybe. Lamar Jackson is a thin quarterback, so you can have plenty of success, but none of those guys are 175 pounds.
Right.
And SEC defenses, they're physical. You can get beat up, and he's going to be a guy who wants to win from within the pocket, but he is also mobile, and he's going to take some opportunities when they're presented as far as his legs. So he's going to, hopefully he's very smart. One thing I'll give Bryce credit for is he picked his spots to run the football extremely well. And despite the fact that he was severely undersized, he protected himself well because he understood how to and when to run to avoid major hits. And so he never really took him in college other than, getting rocked in Knoxville. That was clearly a penalty, by the way. But, you've got to be smart about that. And Keelan Russell, we'll see if he has that ability. But I think at some point he could start in 2025. I mean, he's more than talented, but I also think Ty's going to do extremely well. So I don't think that would be like a necessity.
The reason I bring that up, when was the last time a true freshman started quarterback, is because I thought that it was interesting that, and I don't know if we're looking too far into Coach DeBoer's comments, but it seems like they're all on a level playing field. And when you've got someone like Ty Simpson, who this is his fourth year in the system, at Alabama, and then you also have true freshman Keelan Russell, and then you also have Austin Mack, who has been with DeBoer now. That was an interesting comment to me, to think about the levels of experience that all three of those guys have that are so varying. So that was why I brought up that little fun fact. Carson also says Jake Fromm, actually, for Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
I thought hold on. Did he start that game, or did he come in for Jacob Eason?
Yeah, for the season opener.
Yeah.
What year would that have been? 2017, I guess.
Yeah. I want to say he came in.
I can find out pretty quick. If he did, he came in that game because Fromm did lead Georgia in passing against Appalachian State in 2017. Well, no, Easton only went 1 for 3 for 4 yards. I don't know who actually got I guess I could go to PFF.
I'm pretty sure Jacob Eason got the start and he got hurt, and Jake Fromm had to come in.
So that would have been
positive.
That would have been. We got it right here. So offense, position. This is one thing I love about PFF is they'll tell you who started. Yeah, Jacob Eason got the start. He has the star next to his name. So he started against App State. So he didn't. Yeah, you're right. And granted, that's like a Jalen a Jalen Hurts thing, where it's like a lot of people don't realize he didn't start from game 1, week 1, but he came in like the third drive against USC. And he never looked back. Jake Fromm came in after only 3 pass attempts from Jacob Eason. So he came in early. Easton in that game only got 8 snaps.
Sorry, Carson. I don't mean to burst the bubble. I didn't realize I had that in the recesses of my brain, the memory of that game.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. And that's why I say, like, week 1, snap 1, how often is it? It's now, granted, all it took was Easton getting banged up and having to miss some time for Jake Fromm to come in, and he did enough where he was able to hold on to the starting job. Like DJ Lagway, he was kind of forced into an every down role as the quarterback when they had been running kind of a 2-quarterback system, and he seemed to get a lot more comfortable once Mertz went down, and he was the full-time guy, and he kind of became the player that we all expected him to be. So it's very possible that at some point we end up seeing Keelan Russell, and it's just all about capitalizing on your opportunities.
What are our thoughts on Austin Mack? I know I've shared on here that I have heard very positive things per Coach DeBoer about Austin Mack, his work ethic, his presence in the facility, things like that. But what is your take on him?
I love the makeup. I feel like if he would have not reclassified, he probably would have been a lot closer to being like a top 100 prospect. Not saying he would have been top 100. Don't even know if he would have been like top 125, but he would have been in my opinion, he would have been easily top 150. I want to see he was ranked in like the 225 range because he changed classifications. And there wasn't a whole lot of information for evaluators to go off of. So that's kind of why he checked it where he did. In fact, it's kind of impressive that he did check in where he did. And it's because the tools are there. And, a lot of people will point to Austin Mack and they'll say, oh, there's a reason that Jaylen DeBoer brought him in. Like I agree with that to an extent. I think DeBoer likes having at least one quarterback that he knows that he can trust in his quarterback room. And he didn't know anybody. Obviously weren't getting Michael Penix transferred to Alabama. He was moving on to the draft. And so who was there to go and get? And Austin Mack was a very toolsy young guy who technically last year was supposed to be his true freshman season. Yeah. So, there's a lot of likable traits, a lot of tools to work with. Think the coaching staff loves him. And I would not rule him out of this competition by any means. I just think that when you look at Ty Simpson, I think the coaching staff is high on him as well. I think he's done well. A lot of people will look at Ty Simpson. I don't understand it. I think if Ty Simpson would have been where he was going into the 2024 season, during the 2023 season, I don't know if Milro ever happens to the extent that it did. And the reason I say that is everybody says he never could uproot Milro as a starter. This past season, this was Milro's team all off season. He was one of the leaders, the main guys, and he had been productive enough. You had seen it against Georgia enough. You had seen it against LA. Like even during those low moments, it was very difficult for Jaylen DeBoer to bench Ty Simpson. But last year, during that true quarterback battle, or 2023, last year, I guess it's now 2024, but during that 2023 quarterback battle, when Nick Saban kept talking about, cake in the oven and it not being ready and all that stuff, I think more than anybody else, he was talking about Ty Simpson. And he just was too green. He was not ready enough. And they were waiting because that's why I was predicting him to win the job. We were talking to people in the building that said that they loved Ty Simpson's upside, but he just wasn't there yet. And he actually think, outside of having a little bit of a slow internal clock, which is going to happen for a young player, he was processing things just a little bit late against USF when he came in for Tyler Buckner. I thought he played decently well against USF. And if you would have given him all those reps that Jalen Milro got after that game, Ty Simpson would have got better just like Jalen Milro did. Would he have gotten, made the level of improvement that Jalen Milro did? Maybe, maybe not. That's something that you can't just assume. But he would have, mark my words, he would have been better than the guy you saw against USF had he been given those opportunities. But he just was too green at that time. It was pretty clear. When he put in Tua Tagovailoa for Jalen Hurts and he made that move, you got to be right. It's very difficult to go back at that point. And Tua Tagovailoa had shown all year that he was, no offense to Jalen, but at that time, clearly the better quarterback. And when he came in, he did what he did. Nick Saban looks like a genius. If he comes in and he just completely falls apart, Alabama gets destroyed by Georgia, people would probably question the decision to go elsewhere, even though Jalen Hurts was struggling. So I feel like a lot of people that say he never could uproot Milro as a starter, I don't think that's fair.
Wow. I'm going to clip that, Clint. We're going to put that on YouTube. I think that'll do well. I haven't heard you explain that in depth like that. And that's interesting to process and look back on, because now obviously hindsight is 2020. But do you think that is the reason that Ty Simpson has stayed at Alabama and not jumped ship, because of that mentality that I'm this close and I want to lead this team, have that opportunity?
I think Ty Simpson loves Alabama. He loves his teammates. There has been other opportunities, I assure you, and he has stayed loyal. He can still be a multi-year starter. Like when Mac Jones came in 2020, a lot of people don't realize he left with his season of eligibility still on the table. So he could have come back in 2021, but he could have been a multi-year starter as well. Ty Simpson could follow in similar footsteps, where he has a very successful, everybody thought Bryce is going to be the guy, this freshman phenom. And Mac Jones, look at what he did against Auburn in 2019 when he came in 2 pick sixes that he played lights out in that game. One pick six was a god awful throw. One of them was completely fluky. Just you can't put that on him at all. But so I thought he had one really bad decision, one terrible throw in that game, and it was a costly one. Don't get me wrong, but he played lights out on the road against a very tough defense otherwise. But yet people, for whatever reason, they didn't think that he was going to be able to beat out Bryce Young in 2020. Bryce ends up sitting for a year. He learns, he gets better. I think he was a better player in 2021 as a result. Ty Simpson could end up following in similar footsteps. Now, granted, the big question for him, and this is where everybody says, well things get antsy with Keelan Russell. I think if Keelan Russell sits for 2025 only, I think he'll be in a really good position. Like, I don't think he's going to sit for a year. Ty Simpson ends up leaving for whatever reason after 2025. And, Keelan Russell is still going to enter the transfer portal because he didn't play as a freshman. It's like, now this is pretty much your team. But if Ty Simpson plays just good enough to be viewed as the starter in 2026, but not good enough to move on to the NFL, and now Keelan's got to sit for a couple of years, there's not too many Arch Mannings out there. So I don't know what Keelan Russell would do at that point. But that's where I would start to say there's some question marks here.
Okay, so Smoke wants to know what we should expect from Ty Simpson this season.
I think you're going to get a guy who's going to be able to operate the offense. And we've seen he's a lot more mobile than given credit for. And granted, got to make sure you hold the football through the goal line. Can't drop it before you cross the goal line. But as long as he does that, he's got mobility. He kind of had a backyard style of football coming out of high school. Very improvisational player. I think that's really good to have that because chaos happens. Things break down around you, and you got to be able to go out there and make plays. I think his biggest learning curve as a young player was overcoming the mistakes. I think from a mental standpoint, he would really beat himself up when he would make a mistake or whatever, and he just had to get older and more mature, learn to play the next play, move on from stuff. We'll, and we got to make sure that's not a problem moving forward. But from everything we've heard, he's learned to overcome that kind of stuff really well. But he had to learn to play within structure too, and when the way that the offense is designed. And I think that him going into year 4, he has certainly learned how to do that. He's learned how to manage himself. And I think that one thing you haven't really been given an opportunity to see when you've seen him come in at the end of games is that improvisational skills. He's kind of asked to go in there and do certain things. Yeah, we'll let you throw the football around a little bit, but game's pretty much over. Let him be in some of these pressure situations, let his instincts take over. And I think he's going to be a much more impactful player when things break down around him than people realize.
Before you give your star rating, I want those in the chat that are watching live, and then if you're watching this back, leave it in the comments. Give us your preferred starter for the quarterback position. Start firing those. Clint, give us your wrap up in a bow star rating here, and we'll move on.
I love the room. Now, based off of Jaylen DeBoer's comments, I have to temper expectations because he's right. Experience, on-field experience is so limited right now that I wonder, there could be some concern early. Going into Tallahassee for week 1, don't really like that. But I like that the overall makeup. Ty Simpson is an experienced player who has at least been in the system for a while. I say experienced like he's a seasoned player, I guess is what I should say. And he's a talented dude. So it's a good combination of now you've been in the system the program several years, and you've got talent. You've got a guy who's got all the physical tools in the world, in Austin Mack, who is, going to be now going into year 3 in Jaylen DeBoer's system specifically. He should be, comfortable. We'll see what ends up happening on that front. And then as far as Keelan Russell, I think he's now the most talented quarterback coming out of high school that Alabama has ever signed, and maybe the most talented prospect. I did see something about that, and I just saw a quick graphic. He was now listed ahead of Bryce Young and Andre Smith, I think, according to 24/7 Sports, but I'll have to go back and double check. But that's kind of talent he brings to the table. This is a very, very special player. You have to like it. I'm going to go 4.25 on the star rating. And that is, I think you're going to get really good play out of Ty Simpson. I think Keelan Russell is going to be this is nothing against Austin Mack, but I think Keelan Russell is going to be kind of your number 2. You want to prepare him for 2026. And, you want him getting all the mop-up duty stuff, going through some of those growing pains. getting in, hopefully if you can blow some teams out, maybe early in the third quarter, play about a quarter and a half, maybe close to 2 quarters, actually let him operate the offense like it was a typical game. The more you can do that, and the more experience you can get, the better off I think he'll be. But I think it'll be Ty Simpson as the starter. I think Keelan Russell will probably end up being the number 2, and I think Austin Mack's going to be one of the better quarterback 3s in college football.
Before we move on from this, I had a question that I'm curious about. What do you think the receivers will benefit from having Ty Simpson as the potential starter?
Oh, and that's a wonderful question. The number one thing, he throws with accuracy. Ball placement is, in my opinion, has it been a little spotty at times? Yes, but I think he's way more consistent with ball placement and accuracy than Jaylen Milro. And where that matters, the best example that I can tell an Alabama fan where you understand it clearly is like the 2018 offense where you had the 4 wideouts. They weren't big body receivers that were winning vertically downfield when in contested catch situations. They weren't Seth Williams for Auburn with Bo Nix just throwing prayers downfield and letting this guy go up and get it. That was a very precise offense where the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, is one of the most accurate passers in college football history, and where he would put the football would be in a place where his receivers could generate yardage after the catch, and it made them extremely dynamic and extremely tough to defend. That is one of the biggest issues that I personally have with Jaylen Milro is even when the passes were completed, very rarely were they put in a position where the receivers could generate a lot of yardage after the catch. And when you're doing the quick swing passes, getting it out, the quick passing game, that's what that's designed to do. Get it out to them in a position where they're already kind of moving forward, can make a guy miss, pick up some yardage. They're having to adjust, slow down. And you didn't see a lot of opportunities for that. And that's a big part of Kalen DeBoer's offense. And so I think with Ty Simpson I think Keelan Russell, extremely accurate passer. I think, Austin Mack could be an accurate passer, but Ty Simpson in particular, one of the things I like about him is he's a very precise passer. And I think that if he ends up being the starter, that's where you'll see the Kalen DeBoer offense kind of operate at its best.
I love it. Clint, thank you for your insight on both of these position groups. This is a great show today. We love all of the comments coming in. We love making these videos for you guys. Remember, follow us at Cover Crimson. And then go over to covercrimson.com. You guys can continue these conversations over there with us on the message boards. We have a great time talking about Alabama football. We mix in some basketball, and I'm sure we'll have some baseball commentary coming up soon. But we also have an entire forum of more casual conversation and, Braves talk, what movies are good, what TV shows you're watching. So make sure you check that out, covercrimson.com. You can get $25 off your annual subscription right now. This is a great time to check things out as we kind of go in that lull of the off season where we don't have much discussion. We can provide that for you guys. So I'm in the facilities, I'm at the press conferences, practices. Hopefully we'll have some practice accessibility come this spring. We'll see, fingers crossed. We'll have some pro day commentary coming up because that's really just around the corner. Then we'll move into summer, fall camp. And then before you know it, the season will be here once again.
Thank you guys so much. And get on over to covercrimson.com, like Emily was saying. I actually just put up something as far as the offensive line. A lot of people have been commenting, hey, if you're not getting good offensive line play, quarterback play doesn't matter. I think there's some truth to that. I would actually went in this morning right before we hopped on the video, very long breakdown of the offensive line. Just didn't do like a depth chart projection for it. I actually went through and said it's not just about what it's going to look like on paper. I listed 4 or 5 options per position, shared my thoughts. So definitely go check that out if you haven't already and join in on the conversation. Throw in your thoughts on it too. I love reading what other people's got to say. EG, as always, I appreciate you, and we'll do this again soon.
Yes, absolutely. One more quick note. When you guys have really specific questions about different players, Clint Lamb will answer them in depth. And he, like he was saying, will give you the entire breakdown. And that is something that is really unique about Cover Crimson, is that we are all willing to put in the time to find you an answer. Whatever that looks like, we have a great network of people around us that help us provide inside look into the facility, what's going on. And we try and do it in a way that isn't clickbaity. It isn't, these hot takes to kind of, get you guys to sign up for something that isn't authentic. So with that being said, we will be back, Clint, I guess Monday. We're kind of off schedule this week. It'll be a quick turnaround. But I look forward to seeing everyone on Monday, 9:30 a.m. Central. Join us live. We have a great time. Get your coffee, whatever you're drinking in the morning. We'll do a little cheers to start things off. Then we'll jump into all things Alabama football. Thank you, guys.